From Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana, Siddiqui. First, the headlines. After 2 years, ITIKAF to resume in holy mosques this Ramadan. White House says U.S. has exhausted funds to buy potential fourth vaccine dose for all Americans. Advocates call for unfreezing Afghan funds after 13,000 newborns die from malnutrition. Report says rich nations must cut off oil and gas by 2034 to keep climate hopes alive. Three-way Egypt-UAE-Israel summit, a protest note to U.S. about Iran. India slams Islamic body for inviting Kashmiri chief to Pakistan meet. Our top story tonight. Saudi Arabia on Tuesday announced the return of ITIKAF in the Grand Mosque in Mecca and the Prophet's Mosque in Medina during Ramadan. ITIKAF is the Islamic practice of staying in the mosque for worship for a number of days. Many Muslims choose to do this in the last 10 days of Ramadan. ITIKAF had been suspended for the past 2 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Sheikh Abdurrahman bin Abdul Aziz As-Sudais, General President of the Affairs of the Two Holy Mosques, said this year's observance will follow specific controls and criteria. Permits for ITIKAF will be available soon through the official website of the mosque's presidency. Ramadan is expected to begin on April 2nd. A U.S. federal judge has ruled against the city of Troy, Michigan, in a long-standing dispute over whether a Muslim group can convert a commercial site into a mosque. The site of the proposed mosque currently houses a Japanese steakhouse and warehouse. The 2019 U.S. Department of Justice lawsuit against Troy accused the city of violating the Muslims' rights by denying zoning approval to establish a mosque in Oakland County. U.S. District Judge Nancy Edmonds, in her ruling, said Troy used its zoning ordinance to keep the Muslim group from using the site. U.S. Supreme Court Justices Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas said the court should decide whether religious organizations may practice hiring discrimination against LGBTQIA+ and people of diverse faiths. The duo wrote a 6-page concurring opinion Monday in the case of Seattle's Union Gospel Mission versus Woods. Matthew Woods is a legal aid attorney in Seattle and a practicing Christian who identifies as bisexual. Woods applied for a job with Seattle's Union Gospel Mission, but the organization rejected his application due to his sexual orientation. Woods filed a lawsuit alleging the mission violated state law against discrimination and that a blanket exemption for nonprofit religious organizations was unconstitutional. A North Carolina high school teacher has resigned after being caught on video lashing out at students in a profanity-laced tirade, WCTI-TV reports. The outburst came after the unnamed male teacher asked students to put away their phones and computers, and one student talked back, said sophomore Samaya Josie. The student who recorded the now viral video told WCTI-TV the teacher's rant scared her and she felt it was racially motivated. District officials said they expect only the highest standards of behavior from students and staff, and that such behavior is not representative of the employees of Southwest High School or any other employees who worked in our district. Biden administration officials say they don't have the money to purchase a potential fourth coronavirus vaccine dose for everyone. Meanwhile, other countries are placing their orders and potentially moving ahead of the United States in line, administration officials said Monday. Federal authorities have secured enough doses to cover a fourth shot for Americans aged 65 and older and the initial regimen for children under 5 if necessary. But the unnamed officials say they cannot place advance orders for additional vaccine doses for people in other age groups unless Congress passes a $15 billion funding package. Human rights advocates are demanding the U.S. immediately release billions of dollars seized from Afghanistan's central bank. The country's currency crisis has left 95% of the Afghan population unable to access sufficient food. The U.S. ended its 20-year military occupation of the country last August, causing a devastating hunger crisis that has already killed thousands of newborns. Human Rights Watch reported last week 13,000 newborn babies have died of malnutrition and hunger-related diseases since January. The agency warned time is running out to address hunger in the impoverished country. Anti-war group Code Pink said as many as 3.5 million Afghan children need urgent nutrition support. We're bringing more news stories from around the globe after the break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. Brothers and sisters, we all watch the Allahu Akbar lady from India. She's amazing, isn't she? She's neither compromising her hijab nor her education. She's standing tall. We must stand with her. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect her. But it is not just hijab, brothers and sisters. Indian Muslims are facing genocide.
Genocide that we face in India is not a new phenomenon. India has had several genocides.
They are attacked every day. Even the Indian government admits there has been more than 1,800 organized attacks on Muslims, but they call it riot. 660 people are hanged to death in India, lynched in broad daylight, sometimes just because they were accused of eating beef. Yes, accusation of eating beef can kill a human being in India. We cannot remain silent, can we? Alhamdulillah, OIC has spoken, that is good, but why in the world United Nations is silent? The UN has a responsibility to protect. It has a duty to prevent genocide. Sisters and brothers, we must stand with Indian Muslims and other minorities. We are free, they are not. We are not attacked, they are under attack day and night. Let's do our job. I have signed this UN petition. I ask you to sign it now. Thank you so much.
Mr. Speaker, if I decide to wear a turban, or you decide to wear a cross, or he decides to wear a kippah or a skull cap, or she decides to wear a hijab or a burqa, does that mean that it is open season for right honourable members of this House to make derogatory and divisive remarks about our appearance? For those of us who from a young age have had to endure and face up to being called names such as Towelhead or Taliban, or coming from Bongo land, we can appreciate full well the hurt and pain felt by already vulnerable Muslim women when they are described as looking like bank robbers and letterboxes. So rather than hide behind sham and whitewash investigations, when will the Prime Minister finally apologise for his derogatory and racist remarks? Racist remarks, Mr. Speaker, which have led to a spike in hate crime. And given the increasing prevalence of such incidents within his party, when will the Prime Minister finally order an inquiry into Islamophobia within the Conservative Party, something which he and his Chancellor promised on national television?
Welcome back. Thousands of Ukrainians sought to escape the hellish siege of Mariupol Tuesday as Russia pounded the city with bombs. UN Chief Antonio Guterres appealed to Moscow to end its unwinnable war. The strategic port of the Azov Sea has suffered relentless shelling, but Ukrainian officials say it has not been captured yet. The Russian invasion, which began almost a month ago, has spluttered to a halt. More than 200,000 people are trapped in the city. Human Rights Watch said those who managed to escape described it as a freezing hellscape riddled with dead bodies and destroyed buildings. City authorities said 2 super powerful bombs slammed into the city as rescue efforts were ongoing. On Tuesday, China asked the U.S. to rescind visa restrictions on Chinese officials or face reciprocal actions. Wang Wenbin, spokesman for China's foreign ministry, urged the U.S. to immediately revoke its sanctions against Chinese officials. The U.S. State Department said it is taking this action for China's repressive acts against members of ethnic and religious minority groups and religious and spiritual practitioners. It rejected China's efforts to harass, intimidate, surveil, and abduct members of ethnic and religious minority groups, including those who seek safety abroad and U.S. citizens. It added that includes dissidents, human rights defenders, journalists, civil society organizers, and peaceful protesters in China and beyond. New research published Tuesday estimates rich countries must end oil and gas production by 2034 to help limit global warming by the end of the century. The report by experts at the UK-based Tyndall Centre for Climate Change and Research found immediate and deep cuts in the production of all fossil fuels are needed globally. The analysis said all nations must begin a rapid and just phase-out of existing production. The transition requires wealthy, high-emitting nations to phase out oil and gas production by 2034, while the poorest nations have until 2050 to end production. Israeli media reports that visits by Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed to Egypt for talks are a message of protest to the United States. On Monday, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi hosted Bennett and bin Zayed in the Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh. According to Israeli media, the trio is expected to hold a tripartite summit Tuesday with discussions focusing on Iran nuclear talks. The talks follow reports last week that Washington is considering removing Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps from its list of terrorist organizations. That is in exchange for a public commitment from Tehran to stop the escalation in the region. A new report has found that Facebook failed to detect blatant hate speech and calls to violence against Burma's Rohingya Muslim minority. The report comes years after such behavior was found to have played a determining role in the genocide of Rohingya Muslims. Facebook allowed the rights group Global Witness to publish 8 paid advertisements, each including different versions of hate speech against Rohingya. The group pulled the ads before they were posted or paid for. The report says that despite Facebook's promises to do better, its controls still failed to detect hate speech and called for violence on its platform. Facebook had planned to hire Burmese speakers to moderate content and work with civil society groups to identify hate figures and combat hate speech. A Bosnian court on Tuesday sentenced former Serb soldier Predrag Basta to 35 years in prison for committing war crimes during the 1990s. The court in the capital Sarajevo sentenced Basta to 20 years in prison. He was found guilty of being part of a widespread and systematic attack on 34 Bosnian civilians in the Susica concentration and detention camp in 1992. The prison was set up by Serbian army forces for Bosnians and other non-Serbs in eastern Bosnia and Herzegovina. Basta is already serving a sentence for other crimes committed during the 3-year civil war in the country. On Thursday, India lashed out against the OIC for inviting the chairman of the APHC to attend a meeting in Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, this week. The APHC, or All Parties Hurriyat Conference, is an alliance of 26 political, social, and religious organizations formed to advocate for Kashmir's independence. Indian External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said New Delhi does not expect the OIC, or Organization of Islamic Cooperation, to encourage actors and organizations engaged in what he says are terrorism and anti-India activities. He said it's unfortunate the OIC is being guided by a single member's political agenda rather than focusing on important development activities. The OIC is an intergovernmental organization made up of 57 Muslim-majority member states. Kashmir is a disputed territory between Pakistan and India, which the UN resolution calls to be decided as per wishes of the Kashmiri people. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Imam Malik Mujahid in Chicago. Just like you, I was moved by that Allahu Akbar lady. She stood her ground, fearful of none, for her hijab and for her education. Sisters and brothers, Indian Muslims are facing a genocide. India does not care for Muslim protesting, but it does care for the world opinion. Therefore, we must push the United Nations. The UN has a responsibility to protect. They must prevent genocide. Please sign this UN petition now. Get others to sign. It will help. Trust me, it will help. We need 1 million signatures, brothers and sisters. Please sign now.
I am what hunger looks like in America. I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September.
I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs, and that's still not enough to put food on the table.
I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. Now it's time for our in-depth analysis. Let's watch.
Thank you, Samana. Today is a big day for Pakistan, March 23rd. It's a Pakistan Day when South Asian Muslims decided against the British and Hindu hegemony, they would like to have an independent country. And it's a big day because there are foreign ministers of 57 Muslim countries who are gathering in Islamabad. They have military parades, and among all of them is a Chinese foreign minister. What in the world is he doing? Is China finally admitting they are a Muslim country? What is going on here? To discuss all of that with us is Professor Junaid Ahmed. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Wa alaikum salam. Great to be with you again.
Professor Junaid Ahmed is Director, Center for Study of Islam and Decoloniality. I hope I'm saying that rightfully. Tell us, what's the reason all the foreign ministers of the Muslim world are gathering in Pakistan? They wanted to see a military parade there?
No, I think that's just an added bonus. And they are there in Islamabad because this year's Organization for Islamic Conference is taking place. That summit is taking place in Islamabad. In fact, now it's concluding. And this is obviously a major event. Last time Pakistan held it in such a major fashion was in the 1970s under Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. And this year saw something of the same aura and fanfare around it, particularly because of the standing that Prime Minister Imran Khan has within the Muslim world, has throughout the world, and particularly on this issue of Islamophobia, which Pakistan had motioned in the General Assembly, and it passed basically a motion declaring March 15th as Combating Islamophobia Day. So this is what this is all about. Like I said, they also got to attend or at least see the Pakistan Day Parade today as well.
Why in the world is the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi available to attend the meeting?
Well, China, as many of our viewers would know, has always had a very close relationship with Pakistan. Now it has also very close relationships with many other Muslim countries because it's such an economic powerhouse. But in addition to that, the Pakistan and China relationship has only intensified over the past few years as the geopolitical struggle between Washington and Beijing escalates. We have seen Pakistan grow even closer to China, China grow even closer to Pakistan. And I think that the Chinese foreign minister's presence here, which is, again, as you rightfully say, is very unusual, but I think it is symbolic of the greater role China is playing and wants to play within the Muslim world.
China has the largest concentration camps since the Nazis. 1 million to 3 million Uyghur Muslims are detained there, what China calls them re-education camp. But I have met people who have been in those camps. They describe it anything but a re-education camp. There are horror camps. I met a person who was subjected to rape and abortions. So is there any Muslim country leader who at this conference is going to speak and raise voice about the Uyghur Muslims?
No, they have not. We have not seen anyone raise that issue. I think that this, as we can see merely by the close cooperation of many Muslim countries with China, principally because of their commercial interests, most of these countries have remained quiet. We have heard at maximum from 2 Muslim countries that I know of, that would be Turkey and Qatar, but at this fora, there was no mention of that situation. Now, of course, Pakistan has, and particularly Prime Minister Imran Khan has been asked this question many, many times, particularly from the international press, where he has this very firm approach against Islamophobia everywhere, but in China. And so I think that this is a tightrope that he's walking, in the sense that the alliance with China, Pakistan values very highly, and therefore is very, very reluctant to speak about any internal issue in China, including the Uyghurs. Now, of course, they also reject the narrative that it is concentration camps or anything like that. They acknowledge there are problems, but they don't, the Pakistan and I think several other Muslim countries, they don't feel it is to the extent that one often hears, particularly from the West.
Pakistan did create quite a bit of good feeling towards it in the world Muslim masses when he spoke up for Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, at the United Nations, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, that is, and when the resolution against Islamophobia recently was passed. So public opinion matters in this world of global village, as is sometimes described. Why Pakistan wants to have ill opinion by inviting Chinese foreign minister while ignoring Uyghur people? So Uyghur people are criticizing and their allies are criticizing. So why Pakistan government does not pay attention to this public relation disaster?
Like I said, Imam, this is strictly a question of geopolitics and what these countries, especially Pakistan, consider to be its national interest. I agree with you, and many people would, that obviously this is not an issue of principle. And I think that if you scratch him hard enough, Imran Khan in private may admit that as well. It is simply a reflection of where Pakistan, at least, finds itself geopolitically in the world during and after the so-called war on terror. Its soured and distant relationship with Washington has only deepened, as I said earlier, its relationship with China. And so I think that this is what presents a dilemma, I think, not just for Pakistan, but many Muslim countries, Muslims in general, in their attempt to assert their autonomy, their independence, their sovereignty. Their emphasis on combating Islamophobia usually then tends to be about all other societies other than the alliances that they feel they must make in order to still have that level of sovereignty and political say. Because otherwise, there is a belief, if you alienate all the quote unquote great powers, then you will be treated as a pariah nation, which of course Pakistan is very used to, but probably does not want to have that status anymore.
So do you think the geopolitics will always be a priority when it comes to consideration of human rights? I mean, I asked a deputy director of CIA once on this show, is there any evidence America has preferred human rights and democracy when it was not in its interest? Without missing a beat, he said never. So will that be true about OIC and Pakistan and other Muslim countries?
Well, the way you put it, it would be a sad indictment of the OIC and these Muslim countries if they don't develop a moral compass in sticking to principled positions on all situations of injustice and atrocities. Unfortunately, the world increasingly seems like it's being dominated by the geopolitical battles of countries like, of course, what we see right now, the United States and Russia, and of course with China. And this Ukraine war, for example, was one that cost Pakistan a lot because the Prime Minister, Pakistan Imran Khan, was in Russia when Russia launched the invasion of Ukraine, and he was condemned by Western capitals. And the European Union also sent him a letter when he got back saying that you must condemn this, to which the Prime Minister responded that, we are not your slaves, that we will do this or that. But of course, it's important that during this meeting, Imran Khan emphasized that there must be diplomacy right away. There must be a peaceful end to this conflict, and that perhaps China can play that mediating role between, say, Russia and the West in terms of Ukraine. So, I mean, again, coming back to what you said earlier, I think that it is a question of being able to stick to principles that you rhetorically say, when Imran Khan speaks about Islamophobia, about Kashmir, human rights situation there, about Palestine, it seems great and principled, but then when he neglects other issues like the Uyghurs, then he's correctly called out for his inconsistency. But we will see how this proceeds further, particularly with the rest of the OIC countries as well.
Pakistan is not alone in inconsistency. United States of America itself has invaded Iraq and other places, and we never saw on our screens the type of sympathy and overwhelming support as we see in vis-a-vis Ukraine. I mean, the same Poland, which is welcoming people left and right from Ukraine, few months ago was pushing back few thousand Syrian refugees trying to enter Poland and the European Union with 15,000 soldiers. Do you think that the nation state and geopolitical consideration will forever bury freedom struggle of Palestine and Kashmir?
I think it already has. It's not a question of if this will happen. I think that there have been selfish geopolitical interests of various countries. And of course, these are their perceived interests. No one, I think, is arguing that they're necessarily based in reality, but it's their perception of what their national interests and geopolitical interests are that have caused many of them to be very reluctant in speaking out for the right for self-determination of Kashmiris, of Palestinians. We have seen, in fact, the opposite trend in many Muslim countries, particularly the countries of the Gulf, who have over the years normalized relationship with the state of Israel and have begun to ignore the plight of the Palestinians. Imran Khan, of course, stands out in this sense that he withstood the very incredible pressure that was placed on Pakistan about 2 years ago to normalize relations with Israel. Pressure not just obviously from the West, but pressure from these Gulf countries. But to his credit, he withstood that pressure. Pakistan has no intention of recognizing Israel the way it is today, and still stands firm on these two questions. But again, what I think the Prime Minister Imran Khan emphasized in this summit was that we need much more of a unified Muslim voice in order to prevent these injustices and atrocities taking place. Again, perhaps with the exception to the Uyghurs in China, unfortunately.
OIC has taken a stand in terms of OIC group has supported Gambia in its case in ICJ against the Burmese genocidal regime. So it has shown some performance when it comes to a country like Burma, where probably none of their national interests are tied with. But they did issue a statement at OIC gathering in Pakistan in support of Kashmiris, that without resolving a Kashmiri issue, there cannot be a peace. So a statement came, but at the same time, India has objected why Kashmiri freedom leaders are invited to attend the OIC summit. So it seems that issue remains alive.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, again, to his credit, Prime Minister Imran Khan virtually single-handedly has been hammering on this issue of the brutality of the Indian occupation in Kashmir. And so, I think a lot of grassroots activism has, fortunately continued to remain steadfast on this issue. And particularly, we've seen the success of many of these grassroots groups in Europe and the United States in raising awareness of Kashmir in ways we have not seen before. So I think the combination of a lot of grassroots organizing and education and awareness campaigns, the combination of that to Imran Khan's very public, raising of this issue, I think is still giving us a lot of hope that an international consensus, hopefully at some point, will be reached, that the Kashmiris deserve some form of self-determination from India.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Junaid Ahmed, for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much.
Back to you, Samana.
That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.